not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Truthfully, there's no reason to have them elected.
Tonight on Politics Now, oversight at Clark County and a neglected part of the valley. We speak with County Commissioner Tick Segerblom about his re-election campaign.
We need to go back to a system that actually cares about putting drug traffickers behind bars for good.
Campaigning on law and order. Republican Senate candidate Adam Laxalt takes questions from local reporters for the first time in months.
It seems like I didn't get the whole story.
A murderer escapes from prison. The question is how. The 8 News Now investigators dig into whether the prison system kept everyone in the dark about its errors.
From 8 News Now, this is Politics Now.
Thank you for joining us here on Politics Now. I'm John Langland. Today marks 5 years since the 1 October shooting at the Route 91 Country Music Festival. 5 years ago, 58 people killed that night on the south end of the Las Vegas Strip. The death toll later rose to 60. Hundreds more injured. There was a ceremony at the Downtown Healing Garden this evening. There is a 5K run downtown tomorrow morning. If you want to see our coverage and see some stories about survivors of this tragedy 5 years later, head to 8newsnow.com. In other news, a convicted murderer who escaped from the Southern Desert Correctional Center is now back in custody. He was recaptured on Thursday trying to take a bus to Tijuana, but there are still questions over why it took so long for Nevada's prison system to tell the public about the escape. 8 News Now investigator Vanessa Murphy has more on how local and federal law enforcement tracked the convict down.
The concern is the escaped inmate had a 4-day head start before police tried catching him. Now the focus is how he was able to escape in the first place and how no one inside Nevada prisons noticed he was missing for 4 days. This is Porfirio Duarte Herrera being taken into custody last night in downtown Las Vegas. Sheriff Joe Lombardo pointing out how dangerous the convicted killer is and acknowledging with a case of an escaped inmate like him, this could have ended a lot worse. As we've reported, sources say the prisoner used a cardboard dummy in his cell, used acid to corrode metal to escape out of his window, and climbed over a barbed wire fence. The last time he was accounted for in the prison was Friday evening. The Department of Corrections saying staff noticed he was missing Tuesday morning. The question, how could this happen?
Are you 100% confident that the prison only realized he was missing Tuesday morning, or do you believe anyone had knowledge he was missing on Friday, Saturday, sooner than that?
I don't want to guess to anything, Vanessa. I don't have confidence in any of those questions that you just presented.
We've reached out to the Department of Corrections multiple times for answers and have not received a response. Governor Steve Sisolaca is calling for an investigation. Sheriff Joe Lombardo says he is confident the prison's inspector general will do a thorough investigation. Now, important to note here, Sheriff Joe Lombardo and Governor Steve Sisolaca are running against each other in the governor's race. Sheriff Lombardo saying as this search was taking place, no one was playing the blame game, but that question remains, how could this have happened? Reporting at Metro Police Headquarters, Vanessa Murphy, 8 News Now.
Our 8 News Now investigators not only broke the news about this escape hours before officials said anything about it, well, the investigators also broke news of his capture. 8 News Now investigator David Charnes asked Governor Steve Sisolaca about the timeline.
We had a prisoner who's on the loose, a convicted murderer. Right. You are the governor of the state of Nevada, and you were not told for 4 days. And there are members of the prison commission you sit on who said they found out when we published our article before the Department of Corrections even issued a statement.
I was very upset, very disappointed that that's what happened. I don't know. Now, they said it could have been as early as Friday. We don't know, in fact, when it happened.
Well, it seemed like they lied to you because you said something different, and then they came out about 15 minutes later and said it was actually Friday.
Yeah, it seems like that I didn't get the whole story. All of that is an investigation in terms of not just what happened, in terms of how it was communicated to me and to law enforcement and to the general public. We will get to the bottom of what happened, and appropriate action will be taken against anybody that was involved in it, believe me.
Do you think your own department is working against you and lying? It's not your department, but the department you technically oversee.
I don't think they're working against me. I think that they were neglect and negligent in some areas here.
Certainly an ongoing story. Now to that race for governor Vanessa just mentioned, and what polls show is a very tight race. Governor Sisolaca and his challenger, Sheriff Republican Joe Lombardo, they were on stage together earlier this week. They spoke at a construction industry event inside Red Rock Casino. Questions from the crowd ranged from affordable housing issues, the economy, education. They were also asked about shrinking levels in the Colorado River.
It's the old joke that they made in the West: whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Water is a precious commodity.
The governor has to have those conversations. He has to push back on his buddy, Gavin Newsom, and says, hey, you need to help us in this aspect.
The candidates did not take questions from the media at that event. Joe Lombardo is switching his position on an abortion-related executive order from Governor Sisolaca. The executive order says Nevada will not cooperate with another state which plans to prosecute women or doctors for an abortion. Lombardo initially said he would repeal that order. This week he posted on his campaign website he would not repeal it until the legislature makes clear that Nevada will not prosecute women or medical providers over abortions. He says his initial position was because he thought the order was just political theater. Republican Senate candidate Adam Laxalt campaigned with former UN ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley earlier this week. The event was over at Dragon Ridge Country Club in Henderson. And that's where Laxalt's message was essentially he is the law and order candidate. He took questions from the media and said he would want to roll back some Democratic policies that lessened penalties for drug convictions like fentanyl.
We need to go back to a system that actually cares about putting drug traffickers behind bars for good. We need to get rid of this no bail stuff that's going on. The reality is you have repeat offenders. There are bad people in our communities that wake up and they continue to commit crimes, and we need to treat them like criminals, make sure the community is protected.
Nikki Haley also hosted a campaign event with Republican gubernatorial candidate Joe Lombardo, who you just saw. That would have been on Thursday. A spokesperson for Laxalt's opponent, Democratic incumbent Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, responded with this, quote, Adam Laxalt has attacked federal law enforcement, sided with insurrectionists who went after Capitol Police, and then hit a top, then lied about it. That is her reaction to that. As we get closer to the election, we are also trying to host debates, including on that Senate race. We certainly think it's important that voters, that you, hear candidates explain their ideas. There was no debate when you ran for governor. There was one sort of smallish debate when the Republican primary for your current race. You obviously are attacking your opponents. Each opponent is attacking each other through ads. Do you think voters deserve to see yourself and Senator Cortez Masto on stage together in an actual debate and hear you guys speak to each other?
Absolutely.
So
We've accepted a statewide debate with the NBC affiliates, North and South, and we've accepted a debate with the most respected political commentator in the state of Nevada.
So, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto agreed to our debate and two others in June. We are collaborating with UNLV, Univision, and the CBS affiliate up in Reno for Senate and gubernatorial debates. Those dates would be October 18th and 20th. Laxalt says he accepted two different debates in September. The Cortez Masto campaign says it turned down those debates. Sinclair, another broadcasting company, says that it has not given them any potential dates, locations, or moderators. As for our gubernatorial debate, our proposal, only Governor Steve Sisolaca has accepted our invitation. Next Saturday, though, we will have a Congressional District 4 debate. Democratic incumbent Stephen Horsford and Republican Sam Peters will debate starting at 9 o'clock here on Channel 8. Our Vanessa Murphy and Christian Kazadis will be the moderators. After the debate, Politics Now at 11:35 will be a post-debate breakdown with a panel moderated by Review Journal Politics and Government editor Steve Sisolaca. Las Vegas City Councilwoman Victoria Seaman is suing fellow Councilwoman Michelle Fiore. Seaman says Fiore physically attacked her and the city failed to stop it. In her lawsuit, Seaman claims Fiore broke her finger and threw her to the ground back in January 2021. Seaman says she reported Fiore's behavior to the mayor and to the city. Seaman claims Mayor Carolyn Goodman brushed it aside and that the city destroyed the evidence.
I have been trying to get changes in policy so this doesn't happen to anyone else. I don't ever want somebody to be assaulted and it's covered up and nothing is done and there's no policy changes. And that's what we've been asking for a long time.
City of Las Vegas says it destroys video after 60 days. Even though the Review-Journal requested that video, city officials say the paper, quote, didn't request it properly. In the lawsuit, Seaman is seeking money for medical bills and other damages. She also wants Fiore to resign. But this is not the first we're hearing of this alleged assault. Here's what Fiore said when I asked her about it back in February.
That physical altercation, we'll just have to see where that goes. But what I will tell you is that I would never, ever assault somebody first.
Both women are Republicans. Fiore currently running for state treasurer. Months before his contract expires, Clark County School District Superintendent Dr. Jesus Jara had his performance evaluated by the board this week, the same board which fired and rehired him last year. The first hour of the meeting was a presentation from a trainer hired by the school district to try and help the board get along better. Trustees discussed Dr. Jara's work leading the nation's 5th largest district. Danielle Ford, Linda Cavazos, the trustees, they continued their criticism of Dr. Jara. They claimed the benchmarks used to measure success keep being changed on his behalf. However, in the end, a majority of the trustees gave him an A grade, citing the rising grades among students. Next on Politics Now, is East Las Vegas neglected? County Commissioner Tick Segerblum talks about why he is focusing on that part of the valley, and that'll be a priority if he's reelected. Plus, getting to the bottom of fraud, the investigation into how much unemployment money was stolen.
Welcome back to Politics Now.
There are 3 seats on the Clark County Commission up for re-election in November, and one is the District E seat currently held by Democrat Tick Segerblum. His district covers part of the Las Vegas Strip and East Las Vegas. His challengers include, as you see on your screen there, Republican John Ryder, nonpartisan candidate Marco Hernandez, and Independent American Party candidate Randy Rose. We started our discussion with Mr. Segerblum discussing the criminal case against County Public Administrator Rob Tellis. How can you guarantee for voters that there is enough oversight, whether these people are elected or they're appointed, enough oversight from the county commissioners and from you of people who are elected to run these important offices?
Well, again, I think historically the problem was that they are elected, so we don't want to get them micromanage something that the voters have spoken for. But obviously we need to pay more attention going forward. These were once very small offices, now they're huge offices, hundreds of employees. But the other thing is, truthfully, there's no reason to elect those positions. They in this day and age, they should be appointed by the county commission, and then you can hold us directly responsible. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We pick the person. If there's a problem, we fix it. If we don't fix it, then come after us.
Would you consider something, if you're reelected, to maybe make those kind of changes so it's not sort of, as you're describing, above my pay grade seems to be the explanation from you.
No, absolutely. And one of the things we're going to do is go to the legislature and ask to have those positions taken out of the election cycle. There's we get good people. Historically, we've had good people, but truthfully, there's no reason to have them elected. In a county of 2+ million people, no one knows who the public guardian is. No one those positions are not something where people can actually meet them.
An issue that certainly is close to your heart is legal marijuana, which is an ongoing issue to try and get those pot lounges in place. It's been a bit of a slow roll. The hope was to have them open in Clark County in the summer. That hasn't happened yet. Where do things stand right now, and what are you hoping to try and push through moving forward?
Well, I passed the first marijuana law in 2013. As soon as we passed it, the only place you could legally smoke it was in your house, which of course, tourists don't have a house. So, I mean, it's like, hello, how are we trying to sell marijuana to people who can't use it? And so obviously it's been out there, people using it wherever and illegally. But I honestly can see the end of the tunnel. The state has finally finalized their regulations. They're going to ask for applications at the end of October. We're putting together our regulations to match those. So when any dispensary gets a permit, they'll be able to come, if they want to be in the county, they can come to the county right away and we'll be ready to take their application. We have land use, our land use people are ready to determine whether it's a good location. And we're going to be up and running, but it's just amazing how long it's literally be 2023, 10 years until people can legally smoke something, which, in my opinion, never should have been illegal.
Moving forward, if you're elected for another 4 years, whether it's in the east part of the valley or elsewhere in your district, what do you want to try and achieve?
Well, first off, I said I want to bring the infrastructure to East Las Vegas that is comparable, or start at least the process to build the interchanges, to have the freeways, to have the roads, so people can get to work. Improve the park system. I'm actually going to create a thing with try to do an overlay of the schools in my district where we can try to then devote county attention to things the schools don't do, but focus around the schools. I brought back the redevelopment agency, so over here at Maryland Parkway between Karen and Sahara, we're going to start to redevelop that whole area, which has been very underserved. So a lot of my district is poor. A lot of it's been overlooked for lack of reason, because people want to develop out in the southwest or the northwest. But now, because of the land shortage, actually developers are starting to come back in and look at some of these small pieces. So there's lots we can do. The focus is now, I think, pushing things back into the city, which is East Las Vegas and my district. So I'm very, very excited. And of course, I have part of the Strip. And the Strip, we help Resort World get open. We're working on Fontainebleau. Sahara's back and revitalized. So the north part of the Strip, all net, they're working there right now. So I mean, it's knock on wood, but there's never been a time like Las Vegas right now, and I don't see, we're cyclical, so every time we think we're over it, we always have a hump. I don't think we're going to have that huge downfall. I mean, and once the convention business is back in place, which again has been my district, then I think the town will do well, and when the Strip beds are full, then East Las Vegas does well.
We have the full interview. We will have it on 8newsnow.com, and we're working to speak with other candidates for county commission as well here on the program. Next on the program, getting to the bottom of fraud. Just how much happened during the pandemic and what Congress is proposing is done about it. Get ready for ranked choice voting ads, the big spending from the ballot questions backers on 8 News Now.
watching Politics Now.
A government watchdog has found more than $45 billion in potential unemployment fraud insurance since the pandemic. Here in Nevada, our unemployment office says about half the claims filed were fraudulent. George Washington law professor Drake Hagner told Congress government is to blame.
What we really have seen is that our state workforce agencies have been underprepared to respond to a crisis of this kind.
Joining us to talk about the widespread unemployment fraud is our Washington, D.C. correspondent, Alexander Limon. Alex, what were the biggest problems that allowed so much fraud to occur?
Hey, well, of course, one major issue here is that there are criminals, fraudsters, bad actors who are out there stealing people's identities and committing this fraud. But really, what, experts, law professors, and even lawmakers on Capitol Hill, some of them, what they say the real problem is that the government wasn't able to detect and stop that fraud when it was happening. And so the issue here is that a lot, if not most, state unemployment and workforce offices have really just old, antiquated computers that aren't able to detect things that they should be detecting. Things like when claims are filed in more than one state, that should be an automatic red flag. When unemployment claims are filed under the names and social security numbers of people who are either dead or in prison. Again, this should be something that computer systems should be able to detect by cross-checking either with other states, with the IRS, with county records of who has died. And that's just something that state unemployment system computers were not able to do.
Nevada's had a problem here. Our Dieter has had its own issues with antiquated systems. Is there an estimate of just how big the backlog is of people who had their identities stolen and couldn't file at all?
I actually haven't seen a number of people published, on a nationwide basis as far as how many were impacted. But I think one of the bigger problems here to note about who was impacted is that a lot of the lower income, low wage job workers, for example, fast food workers or restaurant workers, or, people who worked at small shops and places that were completely shuttered by the pandemic, they were the ones who were the most impacted, in part because when they did have their identities stolen or when they did encounter these types of fraud-related problems, they were, most likely the ones who didn't have a desktop computer at home, who didn't have the resources or the knowledge or the access to the information to be able to report the problem.
And that was Alex Simone from Washington, D.C. Get ready to see a lot more ads about ranked choice voting. The Ranked Choice Initiative is question 3 on your ballot for November. Ad Impact says the group NV Voters First spent $7.5 million on ads supporting the initiative. If approved, it would create an open top 5 primary. You see kind of what's going on your screen there. And then there would be ranked choice voting for the general election. Both the Republican and Democratic state parties oppose this. We have an explainer about ranked choice voting and how it works on 8newsnow.com. Counting by hand. Next on the program, why a judge okayed a plan by one county to hand count ballots in the upcoming election.
now.
Welcome back. Several counties in Nevada will hand count ballots for the November election. This week, a Carson City judge turned down a challenge to the hand counting from a progressive group. He said Nevada law makes voting machines optional, not required. Nye County plans to run its ballots through a voting machine and then hand count again, as Merelda County did hand counting back in the primary election. This week in What to Watch, fighting for your votes. We're going to have a Congressional District 4 debate next Saturday, and then Politics Now will have a post-debate show. Democrat Stephen Horsford and Republican Sam Peters will answer questions from our own Vanessa Murphy and Christian Cazadis. And the hearing to figure out if Rob Tellis, the public administrator, will lose his job, that is next week. The district attorney's office says Tellis cannot perform his elected duties. Tellis right now, as you know, is accused of murdering Review-Journal reporter Jeff Gehrman. The hearing for this was scheduled for this week. It's now been pushed back to next Wednesday. Those stories and a lot more next week. We thank you for joining us this week here on Politics Now. Don't forget all the latest political news at 8newsnow.com. We're back with you next Saturday. Thank you for watching. Take care.